gnawing thought that I can't seem to knock out of my noggin is, how was bread invented? Who woke up in the morning, decided, I know, how about I crush wheat into a white fine powder, mix it with yeast, cook it until it becomes hard but not too hard, and then shove it in my mouth? How? And the crazy thing is, every single culture pretty much invented some form of bread independently, and they all use it as their main source of nourishment. And it obviously makes sense why we do this. When you consider how much effort required to make the food, bread is probably the most efficient way of generating calories. But the actual consumption of bread doesn't really concern me, it's the logical necessary food choice. That's why bread is my favourite food, because every human culture individually invented it. But I just can't stop trying to wonder, how did they invent bread? So the first bread was ground up plant roots and flour. So they didn't start off using yeast. Presumably somebody had the idea to add yeast in eventually. But while archaeologists know what people are eating, they still have no way of finding out how they invented that thing. So the way to cook it was obviously to leave it on top of a rock by a fire. So I can assume that whoever it was in Jordan that invented bread probably left this mixture out by a fire for a bit too long, and it went solid, and he said, that looks interesting, I wonder how that came about. And then he decided to shove it in his mouth. He was like, oh my god, whoa, this is so good. Billy, were you the one who was playing with those plant roots the other day? Yeah, so what specifically did you do to those roots? I need to know, because whatever you did, it tastes absolutely delicious. But that still doesn't explain why on earth they crushed up plant roots, crushed up wheat, mixed the two together with water. That sounds like the kind of thing a child would do when they're playing with their toys. Like, you know, when you're an 8-year-old child, you'll be in the shower making potions with the shampoo bottles, you know, hubble, bubble, toil and trouble, shower burn and soap bubble. I think the most likely thing that happened was that children were playing with some plants, crushing them up with rocks, because like I said, the recipe was to leave them out on rocks, right? So I imagine what happened was children, most likely, were crushing stuff up with rocks, okay? It's like, come inside, kids! Playtime's over! So the kids go inside, okay? Leaving these concoctions that they've devised on top of the rocks, okay? With the fire still burning. And then they come back a bit later to see this new, strange substance or material that they've never ever seen before suddenly come into being, and they have no idea how. And the very first thing they decide to do with it is shove it inside their body. That sounds very strange. So then everybody tells their friends about this, okay, and suddenly it catches on and suddenly everybody's eating it. And out of millions upon millions of people, statistically that situation is going to happen to one of them. And in my opinion, that's probably the most likely way that bread was invented, but we have no idea. We have no idea. This came up with how tea was invented. There's this story of somebody inventing tea where they're boiling water under a tree and some of the leaves fell in and it turned brown and they drank it. Now I highly doubt that's true, and if it is true we have no evidence of it. A frequent commenter on a recent video did point out that it's not common to drink boiling water under a tree. I think a much more likely way that tea was probably invented was that somebody was munching on some tea leaves, such lovely, and said, wouldn't it be really nice if I put them in water? So he puts the leaves in water, and he goes, this tastes lovely. But then we have to remember that he just happened to like the drink. If the first ever person who invented tea happened to just not like the drink, he wouldn't have told any of his friends about it, okay? And tea would never have caught on, okay? And so the entire British Empire wouldn't have happened, okay? I wonder how many foods only exist because the person who happened to invent them happened to like them. And if another person who happened to dislike them had been the person who invented it, it would have never happened because he'd never have told anybody. I think if we ever invent time machines, we need to go back in time to the guy who invented tea and tell him that the drink he invented will create the largest empire in all of human history. It's crazy that the Spanish like gold, the Portuguese love spices, the Americans love oil, and the British. But it's fun trying to guess how on earth such elaborate foods were invented, okay? Because once bread exists, okay, it makes sense that people would start combining ingredients to make a dough. I imagine cake was only ever invented because somebody was trying to make some crazy other version of bread, and then I guess they decided, why don't we put sugar and butter in our cake, and in one fell swoop founded the entire asexual community. I was wondering, should we make this a series, trying to guess how certain foods or how certain inventions were made, okay? It was fun trying to guess how tea was invented and guess how bread was invented. But is there any other inventions or foods you want me to have a crack at and see if we can guess how they were invented? Leave your ideas in the comments.